Welcome to Astro Chat with Anne Sundell, Kimberly Williams, and Monica Anna. We are three professional astrologers living in three separate countries, coming together every new and full moon to share our 3 points of view on astrology. Whether you enjoy deep dives into the current transits or you are just beginning to learn about astrology for the first time, there is a place for you here. All that is required is an appreciation for astrology, along with a respect for the various traditions within it. So grab a mug of coffee, your favorite cup of tea, or any other beverage of your choice, and join us for a chat on the astrology of the next 2 weeks. Hi, everybody. Welcome back. It is another week of Astro Chat. And yay, today it is Monica Anna back with us and myself, Kimberly Williams. We're going to be looking at the upcoming full moon in Scorpio. So a little bit of data about what we're seeing here. We're looking at the full moon here in the Central Time Zone. It's going to be April 23rd at 6:50 p.m. Across the pond, it'll be on the 24th at 12:50 a.m. in the morning in England, 2:50 a.m. in the morning in Finland. And of course, as always, feel free to convert that to wherever you live. We're looking at a full moon at 4 degrees, 18 minutes of Scorpio. We're going to be talking a bit about Scorpio lunations, which should be exciting, and some things that we might be noticing during this roughly 2-week period. Some transit overviews. There's not a whole lot that jumps off the page, but there is going to be a Mercury stationing. Yay! Mercury's going direct. Hallelujah. On April 25th, just 2 days after this full moon, we'll see Mercury stationing direct. It will still be in its post shadow period for those of you that work with the pre and post shadow until May 13th. The only other ingress we see is going to be the following week on the 29th. Venus is going to ingress into Taurus, and the next day on the 30th of April, Mars will ingress into Aries. Other than that, the majority of what we see happening in terms of major aspects or the outer type planetary energies, we're going to break down in this episode. But first, let's talk about the Sabian symbol. As always, this is a shout out to Anne Sundell, who cannot be with us today because she is busy at an astro retreat elsewhere. Miss her. Hope she's back next week. But she's got us both hooked on the Sabian symbols now. So the Sabian symbol for 5 Scorpio, because remember, you're going to round up. Once you get past that degree point, once it's 4 degrees and any number of minutes, we're now into 5 Sabian symbol. So 5 Scorpio is a massive rocky shore resisting the pounding of the sea. All right. We were talking about this one before we started recording. Monica, you go ahead. What are your thoughts on this massive rocky shore resisting the pounding of the sea?
It feels really accurate with this full moon in Scorpio coming up and with some of the aspects that we'll be talking about. Whenever I think about that shore pounded by the sea, I can see those cliffs made of pure rock and then that water pounding at them, splashing. You have this amazing storm just going and battering the shore of the land, and something magical happens there. Land has to resist. Land has to resist. Otherwise, you'll have probably this metaphorical Atlantean land in the future if the water could do what water wanted to do and just take and drown that land. So land needs the stability, the strength to resist that water, those waves. However, those waves and that relentless pounding changes the shorelines. It changes the edges of that land. And I feel like this is very similar to what happens with us. When we have life coming at us, bruising and battering us, and those waves of emotions, of anger, of anything coming at us from all the other sources, there is this element of us needing to be who we are and having that resilience to stand our ground. At the same time, our shore, our edges might change. That transformation might happen because it's only so much we can take and not change. That strength of the wave will change the land and the landscape and will change us in our shores as well.
I like that "it will change us" analogy because that's what hit me. When I read this Sabian symbol, I instantly had a flash to memories of being at the edge of a cliff in Portland, Oregon, or being out on the rocky jetties up in Maine. And I imagine in my mind that there are parts of Ireland and Scotland that have the same, where it's craggy and rocky, and you're literally right there. You're on this rock, and here's the ocean and the wind that pushes you as that pounding happens. And it's easy to be overcome by it. It's easy to submit to it. And it takes a certain amount of strength to hold on and to stand your ground and to be there. And I think there's a balancing. I will often look and be amazed at how much of the landscape has changed, has been eroded by the wind and the waves, and yet how much still remains. These ancient rocks, a lot of these places that come to my mind are very volcanic, been there for centuries, ancient earth energy, and it still remains. And yet
Mhm.
it's changed. And so I think there's something with this Sabian symbol and this particular moon energy where it's like, what do I hold on to? What do I, no matter what the storm does, hold on to? I keep strong. I stay
Mm.
fast. Steadfastness to me is such a word for all the fixed signs. And I'm not going to let this go. But by the same token, what am I holding on to that I need to release and let the water take away? Because holding on to it just holds me back. And being able to know the difference. There's that poem about that we say to the Almighty, the universal creatrix of let me know what to change, what to release, and the wisdom to know the difference between, right? What
Mm.
comes to me with this is I think
Yeah.
the real power isn't the power of the earth to resist or the power of the ocean to pound. The real power is us knowing what ground to stand on, what to claim and hold on to, and what to let go. And so I'm thinking it's gonna be quite a powerful full moon for sure.
It's a full moon in Scorpio. Those do not come gentle. Show me a gentle Scorpio, and I would like to redraw that chart, right? Scorpio full moons. Scorpio as a sign in general, it's just a pure intensity. It's we always say this is a water sign. So we have three water signs. We have a Cancer, Scorpio, and Pisces. And Scorpio is linked not necessarily to a running water, but Scorpio is actually linked to an ice, the water that turned so strong. It's so strong, it's so dense, it's so stable and fixed. And obviously, Scorpio being fixed sign, that obviously it changed itself, or it's actually a link to like the depth, although that's probably more Pisces for me. Um, so for Scorpio, Scorpio themes are the intensity. It's the obsession of something. It's the intensity of our emotional life. Obviously, it's water. It's intensity of our emotional life. Sometimes that is really deeply buried, so nothing on the surface comes up.
Yeah.
And I think, again, talking about the strength and the resilience, it takes a lot of strength for Scorpio to hold the whole world of emotion within them and be that kind of very fixed, stable, strong sign on the outside. So very often people this the idea of the bitch face, that's very Scorpio, especially people with the Scorpio rising. They might be called like, you look cold, you have the bitch face on, unless you
Yeah, the
smile,
resting
you
bitch
look,
face, yeah.
yeah,
Mhm.
yeah, exactly that. So unless you smile, people think that you're just constantly upset and angry with them. But people very often don't see past that wall that Scorpio erect for protection into this amazing world around within them. And that is very much at the full moon. The full moon shines into those intensive places. Scorpio as a sign is the mystery and the hidden, right? So it's those emotions that we're hiding that we don't want to bring up, that we don't want the world to see. The things that what happens in the shadows? What do we keep in the shadows? What do we keep in the back of the closet? And here is full moon and shines the light into all those places that we really want to keep in a shadow and hidden. So that intensity between I don't want to have it hidden to oh my god, there is a spotlight in this place, can create incredible tension because here it is, you having some hidden secrets, especially Scorpio. I love scorpionic energy when it comes to revealing political drama or sexual
Hmm.
tension or sex scandals. Those are very scorpionic themes, and very often at the full moon, something comes to the surface.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that it's a prime time for revealing the lies, the scandals, the things that have been hidden. We've talked a lot about
Mhm.
full moon is when you deal with shadow. Full moon is when things are revealed. And if we're revealing scorpionic energies, we're revealing what has previously been hidden. Or if it's not intentionally hidden, it may not be about those kind of deceitful things necessarily.
Mhm.
It can also be what is hidden in terms of what I don't want to look at or what I prefer to keep pushed to the side out of my area of focus, what's in the quote unquote skeleton closet, or be
Yeah.
that emotionally or things that are happening in our world. So I think can also be a time where a lot of our fears start to
Mhm.
pop up. I find that on the annual Scorpio full moon, this is a time when people will tell me they feel nervous, they feel fearful, and they don't know why. Generalized anxiety like starts to because we know that in the process of revealing what was previously hidden, whether that's our inner stuff with ourself or whether that's outer things with others in the world, once something has been revealed, we can't go back. We are changed by it. We are changed by the truth, by the knowledge. And transformation is wonderful, but we've often, you and I talked about, you don't start off the transformation process as the beautiful butterfly. There's the I'm the
Mhm.
caterpillar and then I dissolve and I'm the icky goo, and there's a lot of emotion and pain and release that happens
Mhm.
before we get to that, I'm now the beautiful butterfly. And I think that on some level, our unconscious and our ego and like those things know. I don't know exactly what's coming because it's a
Yeah.
mystery and it's been hidden but I know something's about to change. And that intuitive knowing that change is inevitable, that every beginning requires an ending. Every ending
Mm.
opens a door to a new beginning. That to me is like an innate wisdom that Scorpio energy
Yeah.
holds. So I think as we get close to this full moon, we may be sensing that, the ground doesn't feel so stable underneath us. Is that pounding of the ocean going to pull the earth out from underneath me? We got to figure out what it is that allows us to be stable and to feel
Yeah.
strong and to handle that pounding until it passes. And I think Scorpio is the sign that for me exudes strength. Not
Mm.
loud out there like Leo energy kind of strength, and not the I'm going to hold the energy of the collective group like Aquarius kind of strength, not the I'm going to power on and power through Taurus. It's different. It's the I can survive strength.
Yeah.
No matter
Yeah.
what the world throws at me, it may not be pleasant, but I
Mhm.
am going to endure. I am going to see this through. I am going to become stronger from it.
Yeah.
Like Scorpio knows how to transform pain into power better than any other sign. So I also feel that this is a very transformative full moon in terms of how it's going to help us realize the fortitude that each of us already has that we may or may not have seen.
Interestingly enough, this full moon is also squaring Pluto. So Pluto is the modern ruler of Scorpio, and we're talking very much of Pluto and transformation as well. And
Hmm.
Pluto to 2 degrees of Aquarius is squaring that moon and the sun quite closely.
Yeah.
And what I'm also thinking, bringing Pluto and this full moon together, it's when we are really pounded and bruised by the storms of life, and I'm choosing my words specifically because of we're going with this metaphor of the Sabian symbol. When we're really tired of the storms of life battering the walls that we build, quite often we will go to therapy. It's okay, how can I help myself? And what happens in therapy? You shine a light into places that you really had hidden. And that's where the transformation starts. You bring to light all the hidden, forgotten, pushed down, pushed away parts of you that need to come up to the light. And that's where a lot of strength grows as well. Yeah, it's really, I think it's quite powerful full moon. We were talking earlier that there aren't many aspects in this full moon, especially to the moon itself. The moon only speaks to the sun and speaks to that Pluto, which means for me, it's the focus is there. When you're in a party and you're talking to a lot of people, quite often you have really nice conversation, but it's more of a like chit chat kind of surface level conversation. when you're on a party and you found that one person that's really interesting and you have that one-on-one conversation somewhere in a corner, that's when things can go really deep. And I feel like this is a little bit like with the moon. Moon is concentrating literally on the sun and on the Pluto. And I was like, hey, let's have that conversation and let's talk about transformation.
Yeah, totally. Let me pull up the chart real quick so that those who are watching on YouTube can at least follow along. And then, of course, those who are listening to the podcast, you already have the chart data, so you can pull up your own chart to see what's going on. So give me 1 second here. All right, so here's our chart. Again, the timestamp is April 23rd, 2024, 6:50 p.m. if you're doing Central Time, and then convert it to your time elsewhere. And so here's that. And we're just putting it on an Aries wheel. So here's that opposition of the moon in Scorpio to the sun, and then the T square in the middle being Pluto. And something else I want to point out about that T square, when you're dealing with the T square, the planet in the middle is the pressure point. It's that pressure valve. It's like the opposition can often, it's a push me, pull you. It's like being on a seesaw. You can eventually find balance, but the tension is because they both are squaring that middle point, and that energy sometimes is going in. That can be the, I hate to use the term, but like a weak spot, or, when you're watching something that's about to break and it's like there's that one spot that can't handle the tension, it's where the fulcrum, that's a better word, the fulcrum where all the tension is building up. So the pressure here is building up on Scorpio. So I think some of the fears about what we need to survive could be heightened. I think also what you were mentioning, Monica, about this being a perfect time for any kind of counseling or psychological therapy or psychological breakthroughs, right? This can be so important because what happens when things come to light? They would have come to light sooner if they didn't scare us in some way, or if some outcome or some change. A lot of times people will say, I've been thinking for a long time about XY divorce, changing a job, selling my house, fill in the blank. But, and then there's that but basically, the potential of this happening scares me. I could sell my house, but then I might move away from the family and I want to be here. I might change my job, but then I'm not sure where I'm going to land and if I'll make as much money. There's always the kind of the doubt, but behind that is fear of some sort, be it really strong or minor, that often is the stopgap. So I feel like
Yeah.
this could be a great time to have those realizations of not only bringing to our conscious mind what scares me, but also what is it that I want to be doing that would empower me, but I'm not letting it rise up to the surface because of those fears.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's also two positive aspects if you work with asteroids. And I know not everyone does, but I like to work with asteroids. And so the moon has some helpers in that it's making harmonious contacts, a sextile to Juno and a trine to Vesta. Juno's in the earth sign of Virgo, Vesta's in the water sign of Cancer, all wanting to support that moon. And I feel like this is also bringing forward this idea of, are you willing to make the commitment? Are you willing to follow on your dedication to that emotional fulfillment? The what's rising up here, I think, has a lot to do with what's going on in our lunar self, our emotional center world, or the things you associate with the moon. For some people, that could be mom and family. For other people, that's much more about our unconscious, like whatever you associate in the type of astrology work you do with those lunar themes of life. They're all very nebulous. They're all very unconscious. They're all very emotional, generally speaking. And so I think this is saying, are you willing to be committed to what your soul desires? I was always taught from a humanistic point of view, if the sun is my spirit and the moon is my soul, and I'm having this moment of conflict between them, this is saying to me that Pluto is pushing to say, why are we afraid to let our soul guide our life? What is it our soul is yearning to do, and break through those fears, break through that ice, bring what is hidden under the surface, which is so scorpionic, up, bring it up into the light. But just throwing that out there.
And you can do that in really unusual way. Pluto is in Aquarius, and Aquarius is the quirky, eccentric one. So
Yeah.
it might not necessarily be therapy, although therapy is great, but it might be shamanistic healing. It might be somatic work. It might be just vibing with a great crowd and just getting stuff up from the depth that need to come to the surface and come to the light.
Yeah.
However, again, traditional ruler of this lunation, traditional ruler of Scorpio is Mars, and Mars is actually in Pisces, not far, it's actually sandwiched between Saturn and Neptune, and is talking to Jupiter and Uranus conjunction in Taurus. So they're in sextile formation, so it's nice and gentle formation, but I would say that this combination is not gentle, right? So you have Jupiter and Uranus conjunction that just happened a few days before this lunation. And this is a conjunction, this is a meeting of two planets that come together once every 14 years. So if you want to see a theme around that, have a look at what happened in your life, for example, in 2010,
Yeah.
and you might see that would be the whole 14-year cycle from one meeting point of those two planets to another. So we actually starting a whole new cycle, whole 14-year cycle with Jupiter and Uranus. And again, those planets, those two gods in the sky, Zeus, the god of thunder and lightning, and the god of gods, and Uranus, the traditionally, actually, Uranus planet is associated with Promethean energy. So, with bringing the fire down to earth, with stealing the fire from the gods, with being rebellious spirit, with doing something that is right, but then also paying for it. And both of them coming together in Taurus kind of speak to unusual, miraculous, unexpected, big events, out of the blue solution for your body, for your life, for the earth, for the worth that we see within us and within our world. There might be some switch within how much you're worth, how much do you perceive the worth of others, how much, maybe even how much you earn. This is Jupiter, Uranus in Taurus. It might be that actually your earning potential will change, depending obviously on where that is in your chart, in which house. And Mars is speaking to it. Mars is triggering that from Pisces. And I feel like, again, this is just adding that kind of little humming kind of melody under that full moon around there is something happening that can be triggered by Mars and Scorpio. I find that rulership really interesting because Mars is a lot about anger and desire and how we go for things. And with Scorpio hiding the anger, hiding desire, and pushing it down with that intensity, that quite often actually leads to obsessions with Scorpio, to depression with that theme as well, with that archetype, because you hide all that in the shadow. You don't even want to look at it. So for me, the Mars and Jupiter and Uranus talking, it's what is it that they can change, they can turn, they can bring up to the light as well, because it will be too big, Jupiter, and too unusual, too out of the blue to keep it hidden.
Yeah, I think that big and unusual is so key here. And the fact that this happened, and to give people just some of the data, the Jupiter Uranus conjunction would have been 2 days before on Saturday the 20th. So 2 days before the full moon, we have that conjunction at 21 degrees of Taurus. And a reminder that 2 days later, after it, we have Mercury stationing. And what I find interesting is for a lot of folks, Uranus is considered the higher vibration of Mercury. They both rule to some degree about nerves and the nervous pathways and what we're thinking and those kind of things. So there could be really, I think, some change of idea, change of our perception, change of our thinking pattern, changing the neural nets about when I think of peanut butter, do I think of jelly? Maybe now I think of Nutella. Right? Like that shifting the automatic assumptions, shifting the way we process and think and put the pieces together to come up with that big picture, I think could be big. And then it's Jupiter Uranus. It is definitely starting. It's not the culmination point. It's the starting, it's the conjunction. It's like a new moon, and you're seeding things for the coming month. We're seeding what we want for the next 14 years. And this is the beginning of what is the change? What is the expansion? And the change often means, as you said, Monica, out of the box. It's not necessarily what we planned. That's the whole point of change. And Uranus, as we've talked about over and over, since 2018 and it went into Taurus, it's not exactly been thrilled. Uranus likes change, Taurus likes stability. There's a push pull here. So it's finding that sweet spot for you about how much, going back to how much change am I going to let go of? How much am I going to hold my ground, right? But I think, as you said, that sextile to Mars is so intriguing because, well, Mars is one of the ancient malefics, and it's not exactly thrilled when it's in Pisces. There can be, you know, I feel overwhelmed. I'm ready to fight, but I don't know which battle to fight. I'm ready to take action, but it's in Pisces. I may be confused about what, maybe I have the realization, the revelation, the download has happened, poof, but I have no idea what step to take to get there. I'm working a corporate job and I want to open my own bakery. How do I get from A to Z? I see the frustration here. And because it's a sextile and it includes Jupiter, I think this could be really expanded and exaggerated emotions that just, if you haven't looked at something, or because you've just been unaware, or if we choose to push down how we feel about something, either way, when the realization happens, it can feel like a big pop. It's like that big splash after you jump into the water. And it may settle down in time, but initially it can just be huge. So I think being aware of where we feel frustrated and where we feel overwhelmed and where we feel afraid to take action is important, because if we're aware, we can do things, we can modify, we can make changes. When we're not aware is where that frustration can turn into anger so quickly. And so I do think this is a time where anger issues might be of a concern for a lot of people. um, I also think that the fact that this is happening so close to the full moon, and this particular full moon, as you mentioned, Monica, has so few aspects hitting that moon, it almost is like paving the way to give more space in the conversation for this intense aspect that just happened to still have room to still flow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thing that comes again with Uranus and Pluto, the one comes to mind is that anger can turn nuclear.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I don't necessarily mean worldwide because I'm not a mundane astrologer, although it wouldn't surprise me. But sometimes in anger, we say things that literally just go nuclear, and there's no turning back from that. There's no way of sometimes repairing the relationship or the situation because just too much has been said. That anger that was building up, instead of having a healthy release and transform something, that anger just blew up and just basically burned everything around it.
Yeah.
So this is a potential, I think, with that. Looking at, for me, looking at Uranus and Jupiter in Taurus, I can see that nuclear reaction, that kind of big mushroom cloud, again linked to Taurian, linked to the earth. When something just lightning up, the spark goes
Yeah.
and it blows. And with the Jupiter, that expansion as well. So
Totally.
again, yeah, so again, just it is intensive full moon. And as we always say, we work with archetypes, work with us, and it's up to us to see if we can respond or react. How
Yep.
much of those triggers will push us into a reactive mode and then we do something that we regret, or how much of that we can actually do in controlled environment. Hey, you can't contain your anger. There's so many places that you can go now these days and literally shout out in the middle of the forest, or you can go to the warehouse and smash things with the baseball bat and get that out. There are healthy ways of getting things out. So I'm not saying that you have to sit politely and talk to a therapist, you mean, about all these anger issues in a very calm manner. No, sometimes you just need to go in the middle of the forest and just have that primal scream,
Yeah.
right? Trying not to scare the birds and the animals and the people around you.
Right.
Uh, but sometimes you need that. And it feels like in this new moon, you might need that. But again, have a look that the container is there.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's like you say, a spontaneous combustion could happen, right? But by the same token,
Mm,
if we take action, then that is, to me, the key with Mars. It's like a pressure valve. It allows some of the steam because Mars is saying, I need to do something now about
yeah,
either my excitement or my frustration or the path forward or whatever it is that's coming up for us emotionally. I need to do something about it now. So if we can break things down into small action steps that don't feel so overwhelming, since it is in the sign of Pisces, we don't want to get overwhelmed because then we might freeze. So if we can find ways of taking action, move forward, I think that can help release some of that energy. And so we can work this. It is a sextile. It is possible to work this in a way that's positive, but by the same token, it's a sextile. The energy could really flow quickly and dramatically if we're not paying attention.
yeah.
Yeah. And then we also have Mercury, as I mentioned earlier. It is pretty much stationed. It doesn't actually technically station direct for 2 days, but it is barely moving. It is moving a few seconds, but pretty much parked. And it's parked at 16 degrees of Aries right on the North Node. So I feel again, like I said, with the Uranian aspects happening, and then over here, Mercury's on the North Node. And it's in Aries. What action do you need to take to move forward with your life? What is part of fate and destiny is calling out to you? What is it you need to do to create your own fate and destiny? I really think there's a ripening of the ideas that have already been brewing, but this bringing it to the surface and really seeing more clearly, it is up to me to create the world I want. And so I feel very excited about this. And I also think this could be a time where our mind is so full of thoughts that it could make it easy to not be paying attention to all of the feelings that are lying behind them. And as we said, this is a very emotional full moon, I think. It's bringing a lot of emotions up to be released. So if we're all in our head and not paying attention to how we feel about these thoughts, what part of it is exciting, what part of it is scary, etc., there could be a opportunity for a little hiccup there. What do you think?
I'm just glad Mercury is going to go direct. I'm not gonna lie. I do love Mercury. And actually, interestingly enough, I remember I had a astrologer friend visiting not that long ago. I think it was only a few weeks ago. She came for a lovely little weekend visit. And as we were going down, I live in Birmingham in UK, and there's a lot of canals in a city built from like 1800s. And we were walking one of those canals, and there's this beautiful narrow boat called Mercury. Then I'm like, okay, I see you. I see you. Thank you for saying hello. And that was actually either already pre-shadow or it was already a retrograde motion. So I am glad Mercury is going direct. I have to say, it's been interesting Mercury retro. It was one of those retros for me that went back to things that I was thinking or planning months ago, and there was no movement. So that's interesting that not every retrograde is actually not moving you forward. Very often, the retrograde just goes back to something that you already planned and actually goes back and put those plans concrete. So there were a few things that happened last year that I was planning, and it was more of a thinking about it and not so much planning, thinking about it, talking about it, discussing how and what and where. And then Mercury happened to be in Aries, which is obviously the fiery side. And yes, Mercury was going backwards, so to speak. But it was going back and say, okay, that plan that you made, let's get the date. And that plan that you made, let's get it happen. And that plan that you made, let's
Hmm.
put it. And I was like, oh, okay. That's interesting. I'll be interesting to see again what happens in post retrograde. But it was very much, we always talk about Mercury retro as things or plans taking backseat. We're actually trying to do something and we get a flat tire, so we can't go anywhere, or our technology breaks down, or we can't get on that Zoom call that we were supposed to record the podcast. But this retrograde was very speedy, and it was more of a I will look back into all the things that we needed to do and let's do them.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
This is a
it's
prime
kind of
example of how Mercury can really motivate us to go back and finish the unfinished. pick up the things that we thought about, we talked about, we started, but
Yeah.
they didn't complete or we didn't like the way they complete, and it's that do-over energy. It's time to go back
Yeah.
and let's do this over, but this time
100%.
with it being in Aries, this time let's go back and do over, but let's get it done. Let's start it
But
up. And
it
I'm with
was
you. It has felt so
so
fast.
quick.
Yeah.
Again, I'm not going to go into details here, but there was a situation when I got a call on Monday and I was like, I'm really sorry. I need to push that discussion for 3 weeks. I'm still recovering. By Friday, we're in discussion. By Monday, we're signing paperwork.
Uh-huh.
I'm like, What just happened?"
Uh-huh.
That wasn't supposed to happen. Yes, the whole kind of discussion started probably around January, but then during the retrograde as well, part of the Mercury retrograde was me being in recovery. So when I got the phone call Monday, I'm like, I'm sorry, I just had surgery 3 or 4 days ago. I'm just not quite there yet. But by Friday, I was like, nope, we're there. We need this. We need to sign the contract. We need to move this forward. Let's do it.
Yeah.
So Mercury really was not messing around. Mercury is always quick on its feet, but in Aries, it was like on fire.
Yeah. But like you say, it was interesting to me too to notice that a lot of the things I was being either pushed or motivated to pick back up that baton and let's get that thing done. They were all things I started last year when it was
Yeah.
when it was direct in Aries.
Yeah.
So during that period last year of direct motion in Aries was a lot of
Mm,
things I started and didn't complete. And now that it's retrograde, it's like those are the things I wanted to pick up
yeah,
and bring to completion. So it's really interesting to watch. And then we also
it is.
have Venus, not so much interesting about aspects as the fact that she is interesting because she's close to Chiron, which is always interesting. And I know if Anne was with us, we'd probably be having a juicy discussion about that. But
Yeah.
I just want to point out that she is under the beams, right? She's still in last degrees of Aries. She's at 23 Aries, so she still has to move through. She doesn't ingress into Taurus, like I said, until next week on the 29th. But she's within that, she's 11 degrees away. She's under the beams of the sun. So there's something happening. There's something about relationship, about our desire, about this that is still a little unseen, and it'll be interesting next month when she starts to move closer to the sun and they have that culmination, that Kazemi moment. It'll be interesting to see what is happening now, how that could be unconsciously brewing towards what culminates later. But we'll talk about that when we get there.
Yeah, we
Yeah.
will.
Any other
And I
burning
can't wait.
thoughts?
I just can't wait to have Venus in Taurus as well. That's one of my favorite Venus. So sensual, so connected, the kind of mother goddess, mother earth. Yeah, looking forward to having Venus in Taurus.
Yes, ditto. And I'm looking forward to when we have Venus and Moon conjunct in Taurus. That will be hopefully a fabulous day. But
Yes.
for now, we just have to endure the pounding of the storm and remember that we have the stability
Yes.
of these craggy rocks to stand upon, a
Yeah.
massive rocky shore. Got
We're
some
not
tips and
calling
tricks.
anyone, I want to say, we're not calling anyone craggy.
No, definitely not.
But yes, we have the power and we have the resilience.
So, what about
Uh,
some tips and tricks?
So, for me, I think Scorpio calls for that radical honesty for me. This is the full moon that you just cannot or should not hide. So if you have strength and if you are in a good place, because obviously with the Scorpio full moon and the Pluto speaking there might be a lot coming up to the surface. If you feel strong enough and you think you have the resilience, this is the time for radical honesty. And whether it's radical honesty with one-on-one and your journal, or whether it's radical honesty with your partner, or whether it's radical honesty on a couch of the therapist, this is the time to actually go real, go deep, and go intense.
Mm, I like that. I like that a lot. I like radical honesty. I think sometimes I'm not radically honest enough with myself about myself. So I like that. I may have to embrace some of that. For me, I'm going back to this idea that in spite of everything that's happening and all that brings up, this is a full moon. It is a time to allow ourselves to see what needs to be revealed, what needs to be seen. I'm going to be working on making space to feel safe and secure and to remind myself of what I have, reminding myself what I have so that I get out of scarcity mindset, survival mindset, those kind of things. I want to create a space for myself during this day or two around the lunation to really open up and make that wish list of what I am dreaming for. I want that Mercury conjunct the North Node to speak to me about what are my dreams and desires? Where am I headed? Even if I don't know the path that'll get me there, how do I open up? So, whatever it is that allows you to make your own list of what you desire for this lifetime, and that may be making a journal, that may be prompts, that may be writing, but for a lot of people, that is more about imagery or about sound or about feeling. And so, really thinking about where do I want to head and then identifying one small step that will get me there. Head me in that direction, point me that way. One small step. The journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. So that's where I'm at with it.
So I have another tip.
All right.
Two tips.
Woo.
I'm not going to edit one of them. We're going to leave two. I don't know how on earth did I forgot that. Scorpio full moon is absolute perfect for detox.
Mm.
Scorpio in itself, it's always linked to poison and things that's poisoning us within our body, not just our emotion, but actually literal poisons as well. Full moon, it's all about letting go as well. This might be a great time to do a detox, to do, I don't know, couple days on juicing or whatever detox protocols you use. It might actually be a perfect time to do that and help your body transform through that.
That is
That's a
fabulous.
practical one. That's a practical one.
And combining that, so I'm going to hop on there and combining that with the fact that we've got this Jupiter Uranus conjunction, maybe it's also about a technology detox. No watch, no phone, no internet for a day or something of that nature, which gives our
Mm,
mind the freedom to go where it needs to go.
yeah, that's
Yeah.
brilliant.
Awesome. As always, it's been a joy. I love spending time with you and with everybody else out there. If you haven't already done so and you've come this far with us, be sure to subscribe, hit the bell, be notified when we're back in 2 weeks. Fingers crossed, Anne will be with us then. And in the meantime, feel free to comment over on YouTube or send us emails if you're listening via podcast. We'd love to hear how your transits are going, how your lunation is waxing and waning for you, and we'll see you again in 2 weeks. Bye. Thank you for joining us in this week's Astro Chat. We hope that you enjoyed the discussion and would love to hear about anything that resonated with you. Keep the conversation going by posting shareable content on our Instagram, Facebook, or YouTube pages. You can also email us at astrochatpodcast@gmail.com. AstroChat is uploaded every 2 weeks on the Saturday before each new and full moon. Look for us on your favorite podcast platform as well as on YouTube. You can support AstroChat and receive exclusive content by donating on our Patreon page. We look forward to chatting with you all again at the next lunation of the moon.